everyone. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of The Designer's Den. This is pre-recorded, so unfortunately, I won't be able to reply to your comments in chat immediately. Anyways, I'll see them later. So if you have anything witty to say or any pressing questions, you can put them there, or you can just contact me on Twitter or Allison on Twitter as well. But anyways, I'm very excited today to have Allison on the show. And, as I said that, I realized I should have asked you before the show how to pronounce your name because I'm pretty sure I have it right. But
Yeah, I'm Alison Huang.
okay.
Yeah.
I just had the emphasis on the wrong
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Okay. All right. And Allison has done a lot of stuff in a seemingly small amount of time. So
I have to speed run this process.
yeah. So you all probably are familiar with her name from the most. Is this still the most recent? Yeah, I guess this is still the most recent book.
I think
Candle
Van
Keepers.
Richten isn't out yet.
No, Van Richten's not out yet.
Yeah.
I had to question that though. I'm like, I'm running Van Richten soon. Is it out? I don't know. It's not. It's a preview event. But anyway, Allison, why don't you give a short introduction about yourself? Because I mean, you know more about you than I do.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Alison, also known as Drazillion on Twitter. My pronouns are she, her. You might know me from, as you mentioned, Uncaged. I mean, no, Candlekeep, but maybe you know me from Uncaged. I'm also one of the instructors and moderators of the RPG Writer Workshop, so you might, be in there or be interested in there. And I've also done a bunch of other projects. As you mentioned, I've done so many. I was also recently in Arcadia, MCDM's zine, magazine of lots of articles and stuff, and things like Eat the Rich.
And you're working on Redacted currently.
Yeah. I'm currently... I'm one of the stretch goal writers for The Dreadful Realms, which is a 5e setting, very dark fantasy setting that my friends Kat and Law Evans have been working on. And I will be writing an adventure for that, but I can't say more than that.
No, and that's enough for anybody familiar with the three of you. We're already just bursting with excitement. So I'm looking forward to that. Well, let's talk a little bit first about your adventure in Arcadia, which is a lot longer than you intended it to be. But all of it is great. So the little blurb about it. When a noble family hires adventurers to find a thief, the heroes uncover a personal revenge plot. Bum, bum, bum. I should have started with the name, because it's called A Diamond in the Rough. It's a roleplay and intrigue adventure for about 3rd level characters.
Yeah.
So what was the inspiration behind this one? I know, obviously, for people who aren't familiar with Arcadia, you don't actually submit to be on it. They choose you, but then you have a lot of creative freedom from there. We want you to write an adventure. About what? We want you to write it.
Yeah, the process for this one was interesting because there was so much leeway that I was like, where do you even start? So I started with like one of the few things that I could grasp onto, which was that, this is third-party material. I can't, I can only use the SRD. So I was looking through all the monsters in there to see if there was anything that was really interesting. And I did end up finding the Zorn, which is an earth elemental that can like burrow into the ground and like move seamlessly through stone. And I was like, wow, I've never seen this being used.
It is very seldom used, as you said. I'm trying to think now if I've actually seen it in anything or only read about it in the book.
Yeah.
I think yeah. It might be one of those creatures even that's only in the SRD. There's actually a few things that don't appear anywhere else.
Oh, damn.
I know, it's
I haven't ever looked at the manual close enough to notice those things.
Yeah. But
That's
yeah,
cool.
so it is not your typical hack and slash adventure.
No.
You're more focused on roleplay, which it's kind of become like your thing you do.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we can always fight monsters, but
Yeah.
yeah. So do you want to? Because I don't want to give too much of it away if you don't. Do you want to give a summary or walkthrough, or do we want to just say spoiler alert and dive into it?
I think spoiler alert, because I've already talked about how there is a Zorn in this adventure, and I think that's already
Well,
like
nobody knows
pretty
what a Zorn
major.
is, so it doesn't matter.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, I haven't been able to talk about my adventure just because I was obviously might have been on the stream for when this dropped, but that also didn't happen because of time zone reasons. So yeah, I never got the chance to really talk about this, so I'm fine with just being like, spoiler warning, let me talk about this.
All right, everyone. Spoiler warning. So make some waving hand motions when we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Diamond in the Rough. The Crystallum family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the adventure begins when you arrive at the manor, and then where do we go from there?
So basically, yeah, you're here to investigate like a jewel theft,
Mm-hmm.
basically, because this is a really rich family. They have a lot of money, and they've got some of their wealth stolen. They're like, we need to punish the thief that did this. How dare! And so you're basically, you're directed to the father of the family, Reuben, and he's just, very gruff man. He doesn't give a shit about you really, and he just gives you the basics and then basically sends you on your way so you can investigate the different rooms of the manor. Because for this one, I wanted like this non-linear story, basically, where you can
Mm-hmm.
just like, because a lot of the times when you're exploring a place, it's a dungeon and you're like fighting your way through it, and I wanted an exploration where you can like explore a space that could theoretically be used for combat but not necessarily,
Right.
because I think that's a fun use of space that it's still, I want to say still used, but not as much as I'd like, basically.
I think the space too, and the way that you've kind of set it out, kind of tells you a lot about the family and who they are, and also like that they have a lot of money, but maybe they're not the nicest people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so you
Uh,
meet pretty much the entire family.
yeah.
So you have Lord Reuben, who is, as you said, the patriarch of the family,
Mm.
and a terrible first impression, honestly. Um, he's a jerk. He's a bit of a jerk.
Yeah.
And then his wife, Lady Marina.
Yeah.
She seems a little nicer, but she definitely is one of those, I guess, aristocrats who thinks
Yeah.
they're higher than everyone else.
Yeah.
And then the children, born into this unfortunate family situation, but they're not all great either.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think they're more capable of redemption if people wanted to use these characters later.
yeah, definitely. Then you got a beautiful map in here. I'm not sure who did the cartography for this. I forgot
Oh
to.
god,
Uh,
I wish I had their name off the top of my head, but yeah, the map's so good because I sent them my sketches for the layout of the manor, and they came back with this, and I'm like,
it's so amazing. Like I literally sent someone a drawing on a paper towel once, and they made a map.
incredible.
I'm not that kind of artist. But yeah. All right. So they get into the manor, and as you said, it's kind of a free roaming one. It's not really
Mm.
linear. So what goes down once we're in the manor?
So basically, as the party, you have a bunch of rooms that you're told to choose from, basically, and you're led by a butler called Micah, so that you can be directed to these rooms, and it's meant to be quite straightforward, seeming that, oh yeah, you have rooms to explore, go go meet the people in them, but also because this is a D&D adventure where nothing ever goes right, and obviously even exploring a space like this has its complications and stuff. It turns this simple premise into something more nuanced, I think, just
Mhm.
because some parties might be really suspicious of Micah because I am drawing into the classic trope of people expecting that the butler did it,
Well,
and also just because there are guards around the space,
and he's
and I'm like,
very reserved about where he lets you explore.
yeah, yeah,
And so you automatically get that setup, like you said, that like, well, they're not letting us go everywhere. What are they hiding?
mm, yeah. But also, I'm also playing on the fact that different parties have different expectations. Some will be like, oh, we can't go to the other rooms because they're simply not in the adventure. If we decide to go down a different path, we'll be forced to make the DM improvise something, and it'll
Oh
be
no.
unrelated to the story at hand, just because the DM had to make something up rather than it being clues that I intended.
Well,
But other parties are going to be like, huh, what if we made a distraction and then explored the other places? And it's those kinds of parties that I guess this adventure is really for. Though at the same time, the people that would assume that everything else is off limits just because they don't exist. You know,
I mean,
I also want to set the subversion for them,
yeah.
because basically this whole section is all about exploring different rooms, like talking with the different characters.
Hmm.
But ultimately, the way to progress this is to be like, I feel like something is missing. Maybe the places we've been told not to go to have the answer, and
Correct.
you're meant to like figure out a way to leave Micah and go off on your own to
You know,
see what the whole thing is.
excuse yourself to the powder room. Uh, and then I don't know how we ended up in the bedroom. Must have taken a wrong turn.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so we start out. You're going around. You're exploring the house. You've got this butler who's definitely trying to keep you out of rooms, and so you've got all these suspicions.
Mm.
But you can find clues along the way.
Yeah.
Um, and you also like realize that you know as you're going through this and everything, like the staff and everyone there is also realizing that like, man, there's like maybe they didn't steal it, but maybe they're like, dang, I wish I would have stolen it. Brilliant idea. Um,
Yeah.
and so you've got a lot of great opportunities for roleplay and even for improvisation.
Yeah.
Because so long as you, as the DM, know like, well, this is what actually happened, then like literally
Mm.
everything else you can kind of make it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. And that's why I didn't like include many red herrings besides from the Micah thing, because one, there was a word count, and while they offered me to like pay me for any extra words that I wrote, I was really self-conscious about the fact that I was going over my limit. So I, wanted to keep everything concise, like everything there, like the necessary bits, so that there was a structure to build off on, so that yeah, that improvisation could work without it, coming out of nowhere or not knowing how to fit that improvisation into the
Mhm.
narrative.
I think that we have differing opinions on word count and sticking to it. Like, I have no problem going over word count because I also have no problem being like, cut it liberally.
Uh,
You're the editor, not me. But also, like, if the editor is like, you need to take out like 200 words before I even touch this, I'm like, okay, all right, fine.
yeah.
Uh,
And this goes more into like the history of things rather than my Arcadia adventure. But basically, because I started with Uncaged, and that had a 3,000 word count,
mhm. Because there
and
was
so
so
I was
much. The book was already a massive.
yeah, exactly. And I already was going into being like, I don't want to, I want to scope, because I'm very good at scoping things for my word count. So I already had planned out my thing to fit that. And so that's how I live my life, really, just to make sure that like I'm never making a concept that is too big for the word count that someone else has told me. And then I always like come up like 500 words short, and I'm like, well,
Oh no.
well,
Well, good
what do I
news.
add?
Details are easy to add.
Mm,
So that works out. So you mentioned Uncaged a few times. So
mm,
Uncaged was really kind of your breakout project.
mm.
Um, Before Uncaged, you were I don't had you written anything? Even like yourself, maybe not published it, but you
Well,
doubt.
first of all, I just do the one to do the waiting hand. Just like we don't not stop talking about Diamond in the Rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, before Uncaged, that was my first D&D adventure, my first published
Oh
piece
wait.
of
Oh
writing of
yes.
that sort. Um, uh, Before then, basically, I went to university for game design, so it was definitely a degree where I was, figuring out design stuff, and I had written things for class there. And I've written a few bits of, see, chronologically, but yeah, I've written a few little games, a lot of text games that are on my itch.io. But like other than that, this was, yeah, definitely definitely a change of pace. Definitely something that like is definitely more well known than anything else that I've ever
So
made before then.
I'm gonna kind of sidetrack on that tangent there for a second. I don't think I've actually talked to anyone who got like a degree in game design. For the most part, everyone is like, I ended up here on accident, so I'm kind of fascinated by this. Um,
Well,
what is?
I ended up here on accident but my degree was for video game design, more
But those are
precisely.
still, I mean,
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
very much related.
It's just that yeah, I wanted to make, and I still do want to make video games, and then like somewhere along, because that field is so competitive. Everyone wants to make games, really. And then one day on Twitter, I saw one of my mutuals retweet pages tweet about Uncaged, and I was like, oh, that'd be interesting, because I was already like thinking about tabletop stuff, but I hadn't really thought of like publishing anything because I wasn't in the communities for it, and I wasn't quite sure of where the communities were for it other than Reddit. And Reddit
Oh,
is, quite notorious for not liking people getting money from their work. So I wasn't ever
right.
going to be there.
Yes. Oh God, I saw the worst Twitter comment from someone
Oh no.
today who was like, monetizing writing is the worst thing ever. I'm like, paying people for their work? Man, that's a hot take you got there. We'll just flush that one down. Cause that's but but yeah, so I mean it's a in my mind a fairly logical leap from, video game design because as you said, it's a very competitive field and taking that um those skills of being able
Mm,
to lay out your narrative, to structure it and everything.
yeah.
And uh as you've said, you're very good at sticking to word count, which people who started elsewhere
Right.
um less so. I started out, well, I mean, my muggle job would do IT data stuff, but my writing, I started out doing fan fiction and like you could write as many words as you want. Everybody
Right.
wants more words.
Yeah.
So like I always just write enough words to say what I need to say, which sometimes is too many. Oftentimes is too many. Um, I turned over a project the other day though where it was pretty much like right on the word count, and I was like, yes.
Oh my god.
I
Congrats.
know, I know. It was like 600 words, which was hard. Whew. But yeah, so you saw Paige's post, which is kind of
Mm.
funny because Paige isn't actually wasn't actually the project lead on that one.
Yeah.
But um, Paige and myself very much less so to an extent. Once Ashley Warren started posting about that, we were like, Yes, subvert tropes. Let's share this all on the Twitter. And you got involved in
Yeah.
Uncaged, and um, I actually do not have my Uncaged here at this house at all. Um,
It's
which,
here.
yeah, which volume were you in?
Yeah, I mean the first one,
You're
which
in the
is
first
I
one.
think yeah, one of the reasons why like I got my head start on tabletop stuff so quickly, just because um I think I like the second, yeah, I think like I'm either like the second or the third.
Okay,
um
and which classical monster did you do your take on? Oh,
um so I wrote the From the Forest They Fled, which
oh
was
yes.
centering around a dryad, because when I saw, the posts, I was like, there's already so many people that have applied for this. One, which ones would they be interested in, and which ones am I interested in doing? So, because I don't want to act. Because here's the thing about me, I always assume that there are other people who think like me, and all of my weird ideas have already been taken, even if the things that I enjoy writing are very much not things that most people ever think about.
Yeah,
But
well, I think that's kind of natural to feel like, oh, so there's really no point to it. Someone else is gonna have the
mm,
same idea but better or whatnot, and that's a common imposter syndrome symptom.
yeah. I mean, at that stage, like I was right to have imposter syndrome. I was applying for a project where I had no experience in doing the thing they were talking about.
Nor
But that's
nor did most of the people on the
yeah,
project.
exactly.
So
Um, but I was looking through the monster manual, and I was looking at all the female monsters, and I was getting angry. But I think I was definitely the most annoyed at the dryad, because dryads are such a common mythological figure from Greek mythology
and they're always
that
very sexualized.
yeah. And but like they have a very straightforward
Mhm.
mythology that they're tree spirits.
Right.
But the monster manual says that they are fey women that were imprisoned in trees as a punishment for loving mortals, which always struck me as some just like
Well,
unnecessary.
yeah, first
They
off,
could have
like
just said
what's
these
wrong
are fey trees.
what's wrong with loving mortals? I mean, they're just gonna
Yeah.
they're gonna die anyways. So like
Yeah.
this, and not that it really matters, but in that case, it really would be a phase. And
Mm.
just give her a while.
Yeah.
But regardless, the old trope of this woman has done something that we've
Mm.
deemed irredeemable, and
Yeah.
therefore we're locking her away for life.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just gonna throw that in the
Yeah.
garbage too.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, first we're going to remove that, but also, even with that, you still have a dryad who is literally rooted in one place because of being stuck to a tree. So from that, I was like, okay, what if there was a dryad that was in service of all trees, and that, like, instead of being tied to a singular tree, her job is more to help trees in general, and like she's free to move around, and like when she reaches a forest that needs help, they will like offer her power in exchange for her helping them out. So she's basically a dryad to those trees at that moment.
Hmm.
And from there I started I'm in Australia, which is why this is pre-recorded, because this is early in the morning for me. We have a type of tree called the mountain ash, which has the particular property of needing a fire to like germinate seeds.
That's actually
And
pretty common in the sorry, trying to get my light over here. In the redwood forest and on the west coast of the U.S. Um,
yeah, which also makes sense because oh god, both of our places are fire prone.
oh,
Those places are fire prone, yeah.
was that last year? All
I
of the
feel it was
fires
2 years ago now.
whatever it was when like everything to the west of like the Rocky Mountains across the Pacific didn't matter, was like burning.
Mm,
California was burning. Australia was burning.
yeah,
There were fires in Southeast Asia even. Although obviously
yeah.
like most of Australia was on fire, so that was
Yeah.
a, a big news thing. Um
No, actually, yeah,
was
it
that last year?
was last year because I remember we went straight from fire season into quarantine. So we were stuck inside because there was so much smoke outside that we
Mhm.
couldn't leave our houses, and then suddenly we were stuck inside for other reasons. Yeah.
The
But yeah,
decade of last year. But yes.
yeah.
Um so yeah, so these trees native to Australia.
Mm, need fire, and I was like, what if I had the take of people thinking, oh yeah, oh no, this fire is dangerous, we need to stop it, but actually it is a natural, a natural
I,
process
yeah.
that this dryad is helping out because the nearby settlement has been, preventing fires from starting. And yeah, that was, and I also, because obviously this was very much about subversion, I was also very interested in like what is the most subversive thing I can do. And to me that was, there is no villain to the story, there is no conflict to be resolved. You are just here to witness this so that you can tell other people that this is happening. Because yeah, one of the other things I was, when I was thinking about my adventure, was that I can't have my monster be a quest giver because that would be, asking people for help and not having agency. And I was very interested in having agency for this, dryad. So basically, she has all of the agency, and you're just there. And yeah, that's
You can
why I'm.
you can help her.
Yeah.
You can realize that like she's frustrated because
Mm,
like these people think they're doing a good thing,
mm,
but they're not, and like she can't
yeah.
communicate that clearly.
Yeah, especially because she is a fae, because I did want to retain that. And I love playing with fae because they have such an like a morality that is so different from humans
That is
that
true.
it's like it's so at times it's really hard to like communicate between those two moralities
Hmm.
because like she doesn't like she cares about the animals. That's why the adventure is titled From the Forest They Fled, because the animals have left.
Yes.
Yeah, but and she knows that she has this under control, but she doesn't care if the humans or like the people living in the nearby settlement are hurt in the crossfire because they're not her problem.
Yeah, they're not under her care, and
Mm,
theoretically they are capable of taking care of themselves. So
yeah,
like they should just do that. It shouldn't be her
yeah,
concern.
yeah.
And I kind of like your representation of the dryad in that particular one, um, because it kind of harkened back to like one of my favorite representations in media of dryads, which is actually in the Chronicles of Narnia,
Huh.
where they're the spirit of the trees. They can
Mm,
assume physical bodies, kind of similar to humans, but it's mostly like made up of like flower petals, like blossoms and
right.
petals, and they can go in and out of various trees to deal with whatever it is they need to stop the ills of the
Mm,
realms, or to like in the case where you first encounter them, they're trying to communicate to the children that like something's wrong, you shouldn't go.
mm.
And yeah, so it was very much a callback to that. And also like um those dryads sometimes get very angry. And I was like, yes.
Yes.
I would also get angry if someone's like, but you're just a tree.
Yeah.
Um, you know. So I think, that was obviously very well received.
Mm.
You got an Any for that one. That was your.
Yep. Well, I actually got the Annie was for volume 3 actually, which I did art for.
Oh,
Uncaged 1 notoriously like the Annies for that went to another thing and everyone was very angry.
well, not everyone can immediately recognize
Yeah.
greatness when they see it in a committee. Okay. Obviously, afterwards they realized the error of their way, and in future, um, ones gave proper credit. You also were nominated for another Annie, though, for the Book of Seasons,
Yeah,
Solstice. Yeah.
yeah. That was because of Uncaged's success. There was a lot of people that were in the project that were like, "Oh my god, we can actually like make stuff, and people will like it, and like there is a market for this." And we were so encouraged. It was beautiful. So there was just a bunch of spin-off projects, and one of them was Book of Seasons, where we were like, we have all these, what if we did like seasonal adventures that are similar um to Uncaged, but obviously revolving around seasons, not necessarily monsters. And I wrote Before the Pitchforks Come, which is, I think, still one of my favorite adventures that I've written. It's also my darkest because it directly deals with themes of misogyny, racism, xenophobia,
Hmm.
and yeah, and that was a retelling of The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen.
Which
Because
has been completely sterilized, and most people may know the most recent retelling of it as Frozen.
yeah,
Wherein all of the good bits, the interest well not good, but the interesting bits have been stripped out and replaced with
uh,
singing. Um, not to say
yeah,
Frozen's not a great movie, but it is definitely not the Snow Queen.
yeah, it's very different. Like, though I guess it's kind of nice that they were like, I guess it's nice that they call it Frozen rather than the Snow Queen, so people like, there is a correlation there, but people maybe will be able to actually like come across the Snow Queen without it being like, oh, that's just Frozen.
Yes, without some of the biases that people who grew up with Disney and then
Mm,
find the old original
yeah.
fairy tales. Like I know someone who read the original Little Mermaid, the Hans Christian Andersen, and they were terrified,
Oh.
horrified. They were like, "That's not what she's like," and I'm like, "Well, actually, that is what she's like." And the Disney one, that's not what she's
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Um, but they both kind of have their places. Gentle, soft
Mm,
lead into uh, there's more than meets the eye for
mm,
children because the Snow Queen would definitely not be super child appropriate.
yeah.
It's a bit
Though, at some point, they did still think that Elsa was going to be the villain, and I still very much want to see how that would have turned out. But then
um
again, in the original Snow Queen's like, she's the antagonist, but like I think her morality is so different from what we see in a
mhm,
villain for her to be actually a villain, because she just wants to keep Kai there. She doesn't want to like take over the world or anything.
correct. She's just kind of doing her thing.
Mm.
It just happens to not be what everyone else likes.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, this is I had to look it up to see when it was originally published. In 1844,
Mm.
when fairy tales were dark.
Yeah.
They were not the parables of morality and
Mm.
everything. It was more like
Yeah.
um, things you tell your children to get them to behave.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so you did your Uncaged, you did the Book of Seasons, um, and then you went into seclusion because you couldn't talk about working on Candlekeep. Um,
Yeah, pretty much.
so obviously in Candlekeep, for everyone who's not familiar, Alison's adventure is Mazfrot's Mighty Digressions, which if you haven't
Indeed.
had a chance to play it, uh, go do so. Um, it is. Oh, I was gonna say marvelous, but then that's just adding another M. It's marvelous though.
Thank you.
Yeah. I had the pleasure of uh previewing it. I think was it yeah. I'm trying to remember now. Like with all the Baldman game stuff, we previewed so much
Yeah.
of the stuff, and I'm like, was this one of the preview ones? I think it was. Because this is the Yeah, this is the second one. So we previewed 1 and 2 and 5 and 6. Um, and then we added 3 and 7, and everybody's like, "Where's 4?" We're getting to it. We're getting to it. Calm down. But yeah, so I imagine that was quite the journey going
Mm,
from graduating with your game design for video games
mm.
to being a published author from well, you know, the world's greatest role-playing game, as they like to say.
Mm.
Um, so what was it like writing Mazfrost's Mighty Digressions? So, as I understand, you had a lot of leeway there too.
There was amount of leeway, but I feel like there was, because it's first party material, and everything needs to be to a certain standard. There, I definitely feel like I had more freedom with Arcadia, for example, just
Well, yeah.
because, yeah. With Masros, I was definitely like interested in. Oh, actually, you were talking about the process and how it was like. Basically, this was interesting in that a lot of the writing that I do is through like collaboration and like just talking to people on Discord. Well, this was a series of emails exchanged between me and Chris Perkins. So
Writing.
it was different in that regard, but also at that stage I had done a few things that were through email exchange, so it wasn't like new to me. It was just like definitely like
It's
taking that project to a logical, next level.
Yeah. And writing for Wizards is a little bit different, obviously, than a collaborative project. Even though there were a
Mm,
bunch of people writing on this, everyone was kind of working in their own silos.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
We weren't told who else was in the book, so
which frustrating in its own right because then you don't know who you can talk to because it's NDA
yeah.
with.
Oh my god. Uh, oh, I was under that NDA for like pretty much a full year, and it was like, I can't talk to this anyone.
I
Uh,
think it was almost a year and a quarter actually. The NDA on that one.
yeah, because I was approached in January 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Early 2020.
and
The timeline checks
yeah.
out. Yeah, so then you get told we're gonna do Candlekeep, come up with a mystery.
Mm,
And you're like, okay, so a mystery. I have to start in Candlekeep. And then you kind of had a lot of freedom from there, and you
yeah.
decided to go with Masquerade. So it is the book itself is a collection of eclectic essays, which I love that because it's not necessarily like your traditional book and everything.
Mm,
So you've got a lot of uh opportunity there to kind of bring in a lot of different things.
yeah.
Um including as you started with the shape changer. Uh a brand new.
Well, it was from like I think like first edition or something, like really early on, but it was like we wanted to bring it back because
Yeah.
it worked well for this adventure.
I mean, it even though it was actually technically previously published, it was still brand
Mm,
new to a large portion
yeah,
of the D&D community who only
yeah,
got into D&D with 5th edition.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, so do you want to do a brief summary of the Mass Frost?
Yeah, sure. But though before I really get into it, I do want to like talk about the book itself. As you were saying, the eclectic essays.
Yes.
I was really interested in like doing that for my book because it's the second book in Candlekeep. It's for second levels, and I really wanted something that would be helpful to the DM because that early on, and I didn't know what other adventures everyone else was doing. I wanted it to be open ended
Mm-hmm.
so that there was a lot of possibility to maybe like do foreshadowing for other adventures, or like if the DM wasn't planning to do all of the Candlekeep adventures, to do foreshadowing for their own storylines and
Yeah, they
stuff.
can easily tie it into
Yeah,
whatever they want.
it's basically a MacGuffin, which is another M. But sometimes you need that, and I wanted there to be enough details about the book itself so that it has an identity of its own rather than just being, a plot device, essentially.
Huh.
But yeah, the adventure itself. So, God, where do we even start with the mystery? So, as you mentioned before, what did you mention before? I don't know. Basically, the premise around this is that you're in Candlekeep and you're interested in this book for whatever reason, which is another benefit of it being open ended because you can like tie in character motivations. And
Mhm.
with these, I was also worried that like what if a character never picks up this book because they're just simply not interested in it? So, like, have it appeal to everyone that has an interest in books, basically. But as soon as you pick it up, it transforms into this ectoplasmic ball, basically, that like tries to drain your life.
Mhm.
And from there, you're informed that this isn't the only book that's been doing this. We have no idea, like, what is going on. Our security is extremely tough. Like, you shouldn't be able to, like, steal books from Candlekeep. So, what is going on here?
Shouldn't be
Hey,
able to
can you please
steal
help?
them. You shouldn't be able to, cast magic spells on them. Like,
Yeah.
because, Candlekeep has, a lot of the people there, the Avowed, they have magical abilities, and
Mm,
which kind of important if you need to know whether this book is cursed before you open it.
yeah, definitely.
Um, but yeah, so kind of unexpectedly, the book turns into this, as you say, kind of plasma creature,
Mm,
and attacks.
mm,
Just straight into the combat this time, which isn't really so much of a combat
yeah.
because it's just this one little goo ball.
Yeah.
It's kind of cute. It's kind of ugly
And
too, though.
yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, from there the mystery set up, and then you go around Candlekeep interviewing the other people that basically one of the other people that you interview is Yularion, who was the original person who brought in Mazfrost, and they are
mhm.
like they have no idea that this has happened. So
It was a perfectly
they
normal book when I brought it in.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I should also mention that I was actually very happy to include Yularion because they are canonically non-binary and use they them pronouns, and I was like, shove that into an official D&D book while I'm at it.
Yes, get some
Um,
representation.
yeah, and it's also very important to me that they are human because a lot of that kind of representation tends to be monstrous or like inhuman in some way. But that's just a side note. And then yeah, you meet Yularion. They are clueless. They can give you some information, and you also meet Vala, who is a tiefling woman who is pissed that her book has turned to an orb because she's been stuck here and she's very annoyed by that, and she's very grateful if you can help her out. And but the information they give you means that you can pinpoint that there's probably something in Baldur's Gate that is going to be helpful to you, and what you find in Baldur's Gate reveals reveals
Ooh.
the truth.
Yeah, and as anyone who's been to Baldur's Gate knows, things get a little wild when you get to
Yeah,
Baldur's Gate.
yeah, and it is a city very heavily like divided by class, and
Yes.
I do touch on that because my adventure does like touch on like a lot of things that I love to play with a lot, because obviously this was my opportunity to make things into official D&D, and I was gonna take that. So this is very much an ode to both Uncaged and Eat the Rich.
Mhm.
So there's like themes from both of those that you might be interested in if you play my adventure.
Oh.
Just definitely very heavy themes of things not being what they seem, of capitalism being the real problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say the monster not being what you expect.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it takes you through the city, and without getting into a lot of spoilers here, you have a lot of
Mm,
opportunity to meet various people, to travel
mm,
through the city, to see various
mm.
locations, and experience, like you said, that slice of life to let you know that, like, not everyone in Baldur's Gate is equal. There
Yeah.
is definitely a hierarchy, and
Mm.
and like I said, that's part of the problem. And then you eventually, hopefully, resolved the mystery,
Mm.
and you're able to get the books back into their normal condition.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
good way to say that.
Yeah.
And then Newt can return to Candlekeep. And they're all very happy to see you, unless you manage to not do any of that, in which case they're very
then
disappointed.
then in that case, why did you go back to Candlekeep?
Well, sometimes you have to admit your failings. We tried
True.
very hard. Um, but you're gonna need to send someone else. um, yeah. So, aside from specifically all of those adventures, talk a little bit about just like your general philosophy on design. So obviously you like
Mm.
to touch on various tropes and everything that are less than desirable. But when you're sitting down and you're coming up with, you've been given a pretty open book to write
Mm.
something, like where do you start? Like, a lot of people start with, like, I found this really cool monster. I went all the
Mm.
way back to first edition to find it, but I found it. Or you have a scene in mind, or you have an NPC that you want to circle around, or you really just want to visit this location, or
Mm.
obviously you've had an opportunity to start with a lot of different things, like with
Yeah.
Uncaged. Obviously you started with, I found a cool monster.
Mm.
um but in general, like, how do you what angle do you approach it from?
I think my approach like differs from project to project just
Right.
because I'm also someone who hates the idea that two of my adventures are the same as well. So I have to like not only like because subversion is very important to me, not only be like subversive to what's already out there, but be subversive to myself. So like
Yeah.
each of my adventures is structured differently. Like if you look at the way that Masfroth's is laid out compared to Diamond in the Rough, they're very different.
And
So
not just because they have different layout artists.
yeah, definitely. So it's definitely like, what have I already done, and what else is out there that I am interested in, and then like
Mm-hmm.
I have that compared, and with like what themes I want to explore, and like a lot of my early process is just like thinking about like all the different aspects of it that I'm interested in tackling, and then just letting it ruminate in my mind for a while until I figure out, oh, actually, here's an angle. Though for some projects, I've definitely that rumination happens quite quickly. Sometimes I'm just like thinking about it an hour later. I'm like, wait a second, what if I combine them like this? And
Yeah.
they're
You're laying
that's always
down, laying down, about to fall asleep, and you're like, what if that's actually the good guy? And then you're like, I need to write this down. No, I need to go to
yeah.
sleep.
I think it helps that a lot of collaborative projects that are like posted on Twitter and stuff, they're the application time is like 24 hours just because a lot of people apply to them, so you have to you're forced yourself to like
Think quickly.
get it like something down.
Oh,
And I think it
yeah.
yeah,
I
I think it also helps that like tonally, like there are some of my adventures that like are definitely way more serious than others, but there is also comedic ones. Like for Eat the Rich, my adventure is called A Mouse Unusual Scheme, which tells you that like the more puns are in a title, the more likely that I am taking a more lighthearted approach to things. So
I was trying to decide if I go the same way. Not necessarily.
so sometimes like I'm definitely like approaching it from like I like to call it a more shitposty angle, in which I'm just like, what if this funny thing happened? And then I sit down and write it, and it's actually like way more like complex and like nuanced than it sounds on paper, just because that's how I work. And
Sometimes
yeah, another
the random Twitter shitpost turns into a whole
yeah.
thing, and then you're like, what have I done?
Ah,
But also, this is good. This is good, yeah.
yeah.
Um, I think it's interesting that you mentioned the like the open call things, and
Mm,
there's kind of like a certain pressure, like you said, because
mm,
they're usually very short. They're like submit, like, here's the concept, submit your pitch. You cannot use any more than this many words to submit your pitch.
yeah.
So not only do you have to like think of something that fits the theme on the fly, but you also have to be
Mm,
able to concisely explain it.
yeah.
Um,
Pretty much.
and my most recent pitch to something like that, um, God, I had to trim words each time because I'm like, oh, I'm like 25 words over.
Oh no.
But it was a pitch, so I managed to trim out some of the adjectives. I tend to be heavy on the adjectives. And I think, just doing those frequently actually kind of helps you be a better writer, because you get used to, like, you can come up with a bunch of things, and if you come up with a bunch of things, then you have more options, more opportunity
Yeah.
to fill out the one that's good, rather than if you came up with one idea and then you get stuck halfway through it and you're like, God, I hate it now. But you're stuck because you don't have another idea. And I think
Yeah.
that's probably something that you've gotten from your
Yeah.
academic studies, because like I said, I imagine in video game, like, they don't want you to focus on like this one solid strict path, because that's a boring game.
Yeah. And just, like being able to have like different ideas, because, you have to submit a lot of games over the years of that course, and it wouldn't do well to just like submit the same game over and over again.
Unlike when you find a topic of research that you're very passionate about in college, and you can submit papers related to that topic for 6 different classes. Find one topic and research it really well. I managed to somehow tie. I was on a kick about how education was horrible, which is still true, still remains true, and how the educational system in America needed to be torn down and rebuilt from the ground up, and that we should really take a lot of cues from the Montessori. All of a sudden, I can't remember. But anyways, their method of learning, and that like each child has its own way of doing it, their own pacing, and that like standardizing everything really is not, So anyways, so I managed to take that topic, and I did 8 research papers from it.
Oh my God. That's incredible.
I also took too many classes that needed research papers, by the way.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a lot.
Yeah. Especially because I was a business major. Well, at first I was an engineering major, then I was a business major, and I still managed to write 8 papers on education.
Oh my God. Amazing.
So, if anyone who's in college wants to talk to me about how to make one subject into every class, I can probably pull out of my memory banks how I did that, because that was like 10 years ago. God.
Oh my God.
That was more than 10 years ago, actually. God, I feel old. That's okay. I'm in school again. But yeah. So, sitting there, starting out, having your things, knowing that you need to make something that is unlike something you've already written, you kind of set yourself out with, like, you've got a high bar already that you've established for yourself.
Yeah. And I think that helps.
Okay.
It helps, especially with the open calls. Like, if I don't have an idea immediately, I'm not submitting to that unless, I figure something really good within, like, the next few hours. And, that's fine, because, Well, I love anthologies and stuff. Like sometimes you're like, there are so many opportunities, and I've already gotten my fair share. Like someone else can take this one.
Yeah, I also can't live. Well, contrary to popular belief, I do not live my entire life on the internet.
Right.
I'm just really quick at seeing my notifications. But so I don't always see them on Twitter. You don't always see them. Um, but
And
yeah,
that's why
there's
you live in a billion discords.
I don't I don't I only have like a half a billion discords. When I learned about folders on discords, it was life changing. Um, but yeah, so I imagine then with putting that much pressure on yourself from the start, you have a pretty good system of organization. Do you plot stuff out in like actual notebooks? Do you have like a whiteboard? Do you like Google Doc, Excel sheets? Like what's your methodology?
So the first step of my process is to basically just like keep it in my brain and like maybe write some notes down, but like mostly have it in my brain so it's like still nice and fluid, and there's literally nothing set in stone. And it's definitely a thing that like I'm sure just hearing it must feel some people with a lot of anxiety, but for me it's definitely a lot of like what ifs like come out of that process. And
Mm-hmm.
like because especially if I've just like submitted a pitch, I'll just like lay there and just like my brain will suddenly like fire and just like what like make connections and stuff
You're
that
like,
like I
but why
hadn't
didn't you
thought
do
of.
this? Oh,
Well,
yeah.
not so much that, because with my pitches I like to keep them like precise enough that they can understand what my concept is, but like vague enough that I still have room to play in without contradicting my own pitch. Yeah.
Important.
Yeah. So I use that vagueness to like, create lots of like nuanced stuff and just like stuff that yeah, that I'm just like thinking on the fly. And then like once all of that has happened and I've like come out the other end with something that actually resembles something that could be put into an outline, I then put it into an outline.
Oh, you do an actual outline. Oh,
Yeah.
how impressive.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um Outlines are really important to my process because yeah, obviously after it all being in my brain, I do need to see it all on paper just to make sure that I actually make sense and I'm not just
and
you
I shouldn't say that like I don't do an outline. It's just like,
know.
well, one, I can't just keep it in my head because it flows in and out just as quickly as it occurs. So I have to get the initial idea down on paper. But even though I've written something down, it's still like you say in that fluid state. Like this is just
Mm,
like usually like 5 or 6 words that I've written
mm.
down that help me remember what was I thinking. And then yeah, so we get to that outline stage where it's me and my beloved dozen whiteboards, and I just have like sentence fragments. Like, okay, we're gonna do this thing here, and then this here. Oh, better put a location. Want to have this monster? Put the monster name. Uh, and then just like chunk it out into little things, and then probably decide what order it goes in.
Yeah, our processes seem to differ a lot because, like, once I put it into an outline, which I do put it into a Google Doc because I think it's good to track like changes
Yes.
and stuff in case like I come back later and be like, wait a second, that thing I deleted actually I need it. But yeah, so like, but once it's an outline, it's pretty structured. I have my own template basically. Like, it's not like very formal template, just like an order of to things that I structure things into. Because I do a lot of collaborative stuff. A lot of the times, like I've had to make outlines that are should be readable to other people.
Oh, okay. Yeah. When I'm working with other people, uh, they generally have a template that they prefer, which is nice because then I can be like, oh hey, I can put my thoughts into your form. All right. That is a great thing about collaborative projects, and
Mm,
probably since that was kind of your introduction into the community,
mm,
you picked up a lot of skills and a lot of tips and
yeah.
tricks from that. Um, Especially because Uncaged was with Ashley Warren,
Mm,
the RPG Writers Workshop, um, which is now Storytelling Collective, RPG Writers Workshop is
Yeah.
inside of the Storytelling Collective. But yeah, do you have like from any advice you would offer to someone like trying to get into this who really has no idea like where to start to collect themselves? I mean, I'm sure you do. You're part of the you have all kinds of advice.
Yeah, I feel like I've like off the top of my head, I can't really think about all that advice except for just join the RPG Writer Workshop, and I can just tell you.
No, that's good advice right there. Join the workshop.
I mean, it's technically promo, but you can be in the Discord without paying, so like, it's not like I'm forcing you to pay money.
And there are also sponsorship opportunities every now and again.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely.
If the cost is the thing keeping you back, look for that, or pitch to someone else and maybe they'll be willing to sponsor you. We're a great community like that.
Yeah.
I totally have done that for someone. They're like, I want to do this workshop. I think it would make me so much better. And I'm like, do it. They're like,
do it.
I have 3 children and I don't have any excess money. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'll sign you up.
Do it.
I have no children. I have money. I mean, enough to pay for someone's RPG Writer Workshop, anyways.
Right. Yeah.
Let's not get crazy, everybody. But yeah. No, that's great advice. Actually, join a community that will help you, that will help guide you. Join some collaborative projects if you're not confident.
Yeah.
In your own
collaborative projects are a great way to start. Like, obviously, like there are definitely ones that are like, oh yeah, show samples, but because of Uncaged, there were like a lot of ones that were in the same vein as Uncaged, in that like samples and like prior experience aren't needed. And there are definitely, like, I feel like there have been less collaborations lately just because the hype from that has died down a bit. But there are things like
they're smaller scale now, is what I've noticed. But there's definitely still collaboration is still pretty prevalent in the community. One, because I don't know a single person who can do. That's not true. I know 1 or 2 people who can do literally everything to get a product from concept through editing, layout, art to publish. Like that's a team effort. And by the time you've brought in the team to do all those other things, you generally want to have another writer so you can bounce ideas, so you can make sure that like you're not falling flat. Yeah. Because sometimes it sounds really good in your head, and it sounds really good to you, but then someone else reads it and they're like, I get what you're going for. But it needs like, a motive.
Collaborative projects are also good in that they are an external deadline. It's not something that you set yourself, because I am someone who can do all of the things that are required for a project. Layout's probably my weakest, but I can just do things, in Word, and basically it's nice enough to publish. But I can do all of that by myself, but I am like, setting my own deadlines is probably my biggest creative flaw, in that like, if no one else is telling me that it has to be done by a certain day, I will just push it back, or like,
you need someone to hold you accountable.
Yeah, because like, if I don't have a deadline for this, I can work on my other things which do have a deadline, and then suddenly I'm never working on the thing that are my personal projects, basically.
Well, I'm gonna offer you this free tip. Tell someone out in the wild world, like publish it on Twitter. I'm working on a thing. I'm gonna have it done by the end of Q2 or whatever. But then people are like, how's that project going? They don't know anything about it.
Yeah. The thing about that is, I come from video games, and the thing about video games is the meme that like, if you mention a project too soon, then you will never get it done.
Fortunately, while similar, they are different. But also, like, get your outline done before you tell people that you're gonna have it done in 2 months.
Definitely.
I recently gave myself a deadline for a project that I'm working on with my mom. I gave the deadline. It was a surprise to her because she didn't know. But we're gonna release it by the end of the year. So we still have time, but not like enough time where I can just forget about it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyways, unsurprisingly, we have reached the end of our hour. We're actually a little bit over.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Yeah. So aside from the project that you can't talk too much about, do you have anything else that's releasing soon or whatnot that you want to promote, or do you want to just tell people where they can find you online, find your stuff, hang out and chat with you? Whatever.
Yeah, I don't have anything like recent that I can really talk about, so I will just like say that like the easiest way to find me is on Twitter. I'm at Drazillion, and also I do a lot of my talking on Discord, so the easiest way to reach me on Discord is in the RPG Writer Discord. So you can join me in the RPG Writer Workshop. That's where you'll find me.
And I will be sure to get the link to the RPG Writer Workshop in the links that I already have for you on my website, so that people can find you there.
Yeah. I have my video games and my little indie TTRPGs on my itch.io at Drazillion.itch.io, or itch.io, but that's how that website's laid out. And you can find my stuff on DM's Guild and Drive Through RPG by just, writing in my name, Alison Huang, into the search bar. That's the easiest way because, God, those links are long.
And yeah, all of that is also on your WordPress.
Yeah.
I've got
also,
I've got the link to that already.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I also remembered something else. As I am part of Three Flings, which is actual play D&D stream, which is going through all of the adventures of Uncaged. I play Vittoria on that. That is every Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Daylight Time, depending on the time of year.
Eastern Time!
Yeah. It's just Eastern Time. And that's been a lot of fun, but also we did play through my Candlekeep adventure, so if you would like to see me run my own adventure, you can also check that out on the Three Flings YouTube channel.
That's always fun.
Yeah, and that one's fun because I did cry on stream for a good portion of that for the acting.
But it was good. Yeah, well, I just want to thank you again so much for being on the show today. This has been a positively delightful, even though I had to get you up early in the morning. And I'm sorry about that. I mean, the other option was me staying up, or getting up early. And I'm not good at that. But yeah, so I have a lot of other exciting guests coming up. So let's see, what order do these go in now? I've gotten a lot of things. May, the spring is a very busy time for people, so I'm gonna have a lot more pre-recorded things coming up. We have Sadie Lowry, Josh Simmons, Steve Penkatai. Steve Penkatai and I, that episode will actually be airing on the on my stream, and also on the Dungeon Con Twitch stream. Very excited for that. Kat Evans, Latia Jaquise, Steven Garcia, and Chris Bissett. And I'm just gonna have to book June 27th to someone else, because whoever it was who told me they wanted to be on and I said yes has not reached out to me again. I don't have your email address. No. I don't know who you are. I'm sorry, I've forgotten. This is my second plea. Please reach out to me.
If you're out there.
If you're out there and you get my message, I'm waiting. Don't send it in a bottle on the ocean, because I'm not near the ocean. Send it via Twitter. Because I'm pretty sure maybe, or Discord. I don't know. I remember talking to someone.
There are so many methods of communicating with people.
Yeah. So yeah, find me here every Sunday, 4 p.m. Central Time. You can also find me here some Sunday evenings for the Baldwin HQ show. Some Monday evenings I am producing on this channel the Jeff Stevens Talks RPGs, and other evenings it is the Herald's Guild office hours, so lots of great content going on. Don't miss it there. And I would say come play games with me this weekend, but by the time you see this, I will be in the middle of my last game for this weekend. So, come play games with me in the future. I'm going to be starting to run my second Theros adventure from the trilogy saga. Quadrilogy, maybe? I don't know. I haven't decided if I'm making a fourth one. In July. So, but anyways, enough about me. That is it for this episode of The Designer's Den. And thanks again, Alison.
It's great to be on.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.